It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, all things considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Real thrill, I got a guy who's a great storyteller, a noted musician who's been around the block a few times, and it's a treat he's in town, and plenty of opportunities to see him through Sunday at the Blue Note in Waikiki. Dan Kuramoto is the band leader of Hiroshima. They've been around a long time, and a lot of fans here in the Honolulu area. A very personal connection they've had in a number of ways, and he joins us now here on All Things Considered. Real treat, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure meeting you, and it's a real honor to be here. But for us, it's different because to actually come, we've never played a club in Hawaii before. We've only played kind of larger concerts, which we totally dig, but this gives us a more personal kind of connection with the folks, which is really cool because, you know, Kimo, obviously, who's our kind of musical guide director, you know, he's from Kalihi, and then Yvette, who's, you know, joined us to sing songs with us when we do vocal songs, you know, she's from Eva, and several of us have family here, but the most important thing is that, like, what we love so much about Hawaii is that, you know, I remember the first time that I remember when I was old enough to come and remember that, you know, on my own why I was coming. I was visiting my brother who lived in Kava, and then because he was, you know, surfing semi-professionally and making surfboards and stuff. And I remember that time when I flew home, I realized why I'm always so depressed. It wasn't about the ocean, but Hawaii is a very spiritual place. And it's a spiritual place for everyone, you know. But, you know, in particular for Asian Pacific people, you know, ostensibly, it's like it's the first place that I know in America where I can walk around and I fit in. There's no one staring at me, you know. But beyond that, it's a sense of a larger kind of humanity. I mean, you're in the middle of nature. Nature owns you. You know, you're this dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And then the spirit of the people who migrated here, you know, really, to me, is kind of an inspiration for the whole planet, you know. And so when we come here, it's like being replenished, you know, with, you know, the real mana of what we're supposed to be doing here on this life in this real short window, you know. And that's why I'm a guy who goes on stage wearing a T-shirt that has his grandson's name on it. My grandson is Milo.
I was wondering what the significance of.
Yeah. Well, my grandson's name is Milo, and Milo's going to be 10 months soon. So he's getting to be an older dude. And but it's about the continuation, you know, and it's about sharing the gift of life. And so this band is like really, truly a family. I mean, and if you think about it, there aren't really that many bands anymore. I mean, and we've been together, you know, three of us since in the mid 70s, and then Dean was doing with Boss Skaggs, hey Rex, huh? You know, and he was in high school, and then he played on our very first record, side A, because there used to be A and B sides. And don't you miss the concept of an A and B side? Because you had to think about it when you sequenced the record, you know, side A and side B, and also you had to think about what was going to be on the outside tracks and the inside tracks. I know this is esoteric, but it's necessary.
And as a listener, there was something about, too, the flavor. Sometimes the bands would maybe put deeper material as they went into the B-side.
See, you know what I'm saying. So, you know, conceptually, and then so you wanted to create an arc to your piece, and now everyone just does these random downloads of a song, and so, you know, that kind of continuity kind of gets lost. We're still totally into all that business.
Well, you pointed out something great. Now we're in the era of a song, if that can even be successfully released. Exactly. But in between, what was interesting was the CD came out, and it could eventually hold almost 80 minutes, and so there you had people trying to fill it. A record would be maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes of quality stuff, and then people, it's like 70, 80 minutes. You had this thing. Are they just kind of filling it to meet the space that was allotted? And that was a weird moment there for a few years.
My perspective, and what happens really is that the artists were compelled, well, really kind of demanded to fill that 75 minutes because the record companies wanted the masters, because they didn't have to pay you past a certain amount of tracks, your royalty, and they even would like really pull back on all your publishing.
After those first 10 tunes, that was it. The rest of it, there was nothing.
All those extra tracks on those CDs, and I don't want to sound like it's getting too political, but I am, and it's because they were running a scam on us. That's why, like people said we were crazy because in 2010 we get a Grammy nomination, and then the record company, a contract is up, so they want to re-sign us. They give us a huge bonus, and we walk away. Because for us, it's at that point where, like, if we're not going to be, we want to be part of the solution. In order to do that, we have to be in the middle of the issue. So it was cool, and the money was great, but really, it's more about like, how can we make a difference now? Because the internet, as cool as it is as a vehicle of potential, it's been so used and abused so far. And I'm not talking just about Napster, but I'm talking about the entire whole notion of the arts and really the versatile nature of people coming to the arts, like coming to a really cool club like this and hearing people like Kamasi Washington and Kalapana, which Kimo used to play with, or an odd band like ours, and we like to think kind of enriching themselves with the possibilities of life.
Well, it takes away from some of the savoring of music. You remember when radio would have a song and you loved it and you kind of waited to hear it because you couldn't get it anyway. Now you can go to YouTube and burn the song out. You can play it 20, 30 times within a day or two and you don't even want to hear it anymore.
Right. Well, it's not only that, but, it becomes the mentality of things being disposable. And then we lose a value system because I think for many young people, and I was told this by other young people, is that there's a profound lack of patience. That they don't have. It's like reading a book. For many young people, the patience to read a book, or the lack thereof, kind of disadvantages them from the spiritual growth that books give you, that lives give you. That listening from an album from side A, track 1, through side B, track 7, that arc. If you thought about it. If the Beatles came out today, no one would get it.
I couldn't even imagine anyone coming out with something that would have a complete album's worth of material that would command that kind of attention or draw reviews that would say this is an album that you must own, sort of.
Well, not only that, but it's the whole notion then too of the arc. So then if you're as fortunate as we've been to make another record and then another, so then what do you do for the next one? And what do you do for the one after that? And I think the best kind of lesson we had is in 1990, the year before he passed, we were the opening act for Miles Davis on the JVC concert tour, and George Wein didn't want us. And I think, that only made Miles happier to have us. And we found out, that, because we're thinking, man, how cool is it to open for Miles, but why, who did that? And then it was pointed out to me, man, don't you know anything, man? Miles don't have anybody he don't want to have. And Miles dug us because we were willing to commit to doing something different. And Kimo will tell you, every show, we would sit on either side of the stage or go out front, and Miles would play the same songs in a completely different way. Always rediscovering. Kenny Garrett, one of the great alto players in the world, he would get, I can't use that phrase, I don't think, but yeah, every night, because Kenny was so good, but Miles would be yelling at him, I heard you play that already. So what's the next? Because
pushing.
Yeah, and then the coolest thing I ever heard is Marcus Miller was talking about Miles, and we've got some other Miles stories I can't repeat, but Marcus was talking about Miles, and Miles was, and can't even believe this, Miles was doing autographs, which Miles really doesn't do. And apparently someone had come and brought some of his albums and asked Miles to autograph them. And so Miles is autographing the albums, and these are all like his really early work. And he said, yeah, man, Miles, it's like, I brought these albums because this is when you were really popular. And then Miles just, it's a classic. He says, oh yeah, I'm doing different things now. What you want me to do, wait? Are you feeling what I'm saying? You either go with the evolution, you either make the commitment, and It's the reason Van Gogh never sold a painting in his lifetime, right?
When you said something really interesting when you were talking about there's like a spiritual, just a vibe that you give off talking to you, but anybody who spends any time either listening to your music, reading a little bit about your approach knows that it's there. And there's not every band that you talk to has that, and sometimes it's completely vacant from, maybe in your circles you come across that more. In mine, it's more of a rarity, let's say. And spirituality is a big word, so people can approach it in different ways. But when you dial back to coming up with record number one, which is a big deal in anybody's life, but certainly I see it starting right from there and going forward. Was it a conscious approach that you were going to try to have music that just touched on these feelings, or that maybe was a channel for you to explore things that were inside of you like that?
Yeah, and but I'm not saying it's only for me. It actually evolved. Well, yeah, it evolved from a subculture that was created from the early kind of racial movements in America, the attempt to have ethnic studies in America, the notion that people of color belonged here, that were actually important to the good of the society. All of those things for us became part of what the reason to do music was, and it made a kind of very clear sense to us, because of June. Because June was able to take an instrument that is fundamentally unplayable with Western instruments. And I don't even know if people will not understand this for at least another generation. And she's playing it with such fluidity and ease, and all these different kinds of idioms that we play, and we play them all, that I don't think anyone really kind of gets it, except for other musicians.
Incorporating it so naturally.
Yeah, because it doesn't work. It is not possible. When she plays it, because it's got these movable bridges, it's constantly going out of tune while she's playing. Now, you're sitting out there and you don't hear her go out of tune, because as she's playing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, she's retuning the instrument constantly. If you watch her left hand, it's like nuts. It is not possible to do this. That's why Stanley Clarke seriously said, and we just had lunch with Stanley because we played Detroit with him about 2 weeks ago, that there's nobody like June. And like we say, and even in the band, every time we watch it, like she played Maboroshi, which is a contemporary classical piece, people don't understand that when people play that piece, koto players might attempt to play that piece, they might be practicing that one piece for 4 to 6 months before they play it in a concert. She's playing 50 other songs with us, covering every kind of other kind of idiom, and then she can sit down and play a piece that complicated, and then if the very next piece, which people really responded to, play a completely insanely improvised solo, but using classical elements. And then that's the point that I was trying to make, that correlation, that she has translated music that's thousands of years old and put it in a setting that is right now, and people get it. It's and that's what she's been able to do, and so that she's been our through line, and she too is also committed to this whole notion that this country, the strength of it is its diversity, and so that's what this band has always been. We've never been an all Japanese band, we've never been an all Asian band, but we've been about the whole human dignity and the right for us to live, because that's why we named the band Hiroshima, because we were born after that, but we realized that people will do things that are not human to each other if we don't say, hey, wait a minute, this shit's got to stop. It's got to stop right now. And so that's the commitment we've made, both in terms of artists and human beings, to the kind of music that we play. And when people lose interest in it, that's cool, then we'll stop playing for them, or we'll do something else. But we have never been willing to go with the flow in that sense. Record companies have always said you can't do this and you can't do that, and then so we don't even care, and then we just do what we do. Nonetheless, we also do things that we think idiomatically are things that are relatable, that we could take it more out. And like tonight's show is atypical for what we were playing in Honolulu, because it's a little more, it's a little more jazz, it's a little more, abstract kind of cross-cultural Pan-Asian and music, and it's
In terms of this environment.
yeah, right. But the notion was that we wanted to just make that connection of humanity, and that's why for our entire career we are fundamentally a black band, because only black radio would play us. No other radio would touch us except black radio, and black radio has played us consistently throughout. I just did an hour on Austin radio right after we did HNN this morning. I had to race back. We did an hour on Austin radio, black radio, and and black radio has supported us because they get our struggle with the art. They get why we do it and our commitment to it, and they feel us because they're in the same boat.
Describe the embrace of Japan. You mentioned Japan. When you've taken this all over the world, it has to be a unique embrace there. It has to be almost an unusual sort of reception.
Yeah, well, it's so unusual that they don't really dig us. No, but I'll tell you why. And I'm not saying that on a visceral human level they don't dig us, but they don't get us. Number one, and we knew this going in, if you say Hiroshima, they don't like that in Japan because they've still viewed as shame. So it's a very sensitive thing, and you don't want to ever really bring that up, not in conversation, not in anything. So for us, as a Asian Pacific band in America, to call the band Hiroshima was kind of a slap in the face. And number two, the very fact that they will readily admit that June is the only one who has been able to take the koto through all the Miyagi-Kai classical professional training and take those things and make it work in all these different settings, that they are offended. She was born in Japan, but never came back to Japan, and sort of like then kind of guided that musical evolution. But June, and I shouldn't speak for June, but because she's in the same room, but her notion was that she grew up in America. She grew up right in the ghetto on Adams and La Brea, and her Americanness is really more a part of her humanness, and that her connection to Japan was the koto. And so she always wanted to go back. She couldn't speak English when she came here at the age of 6. She always felt disenfranchised here. And yet, because her family is here, that this is her home, right? And that she had hoped to be accepted in Japan for what it was. And it was an interesting thing. We did 2 major interviews with the top 2 music magazines in Japan. And this is in the late 90s. I remember, and the one cat was like interviewing June and saying like, I don't want to be devil's advocate or anything, but like, don't you feel like you're shaming the instrument, like you're playing it in all these different settings, and that's not, it was a court instrument, it was an imperial court instrument. What are you doing playing it in all these other settings and stuff? And I remember June took a really long pause, and she just says, because it means so much more to me than it ever will to you. And that dude just like dropped his pen and just like fell out because he finally got it. And then the very next interview we did with the editor of Swing Journal, which is the #1 music magazine in the world. It looks like a phone book every month. And this cat was going like, you need to come back to Japan as an American to teach Japan how to grow, how to get out of, its cocoon of being, as they think, homogeneous, as a people and as arts, and it was a funny kind of comparison. He said that, we need you to be the Hideo Nomo of Japanese music, because I don't know if people remember this, but when Hideo Nomo came to America to play baseball was like struggling to keep an audience, to keep fans. They were not interested. And there was a revolution behind Hideo Nomo that kind of brought, players from different countries and re-infused, again, multicultural, right? Re-infused the sport, right? And this great editor of Swing Journal saw that June could
play that role.
Yeah, but June was only willing to do that on her terms, and that's why she's the badass that she is.
Wasn't that what speaks to the band itself? Just a final note. When I watch you, Andreas Vollenweider would be a great double bill.
Yeah, well, no, he's an interesting cat.
I would really love to hear it. It would just sound so good. I think it's a really cool thing that you've brought the spirituality through the years the way that you have, and that you tack it into the music, that you've masterfully been able to take an instrument that is so like you described so well, part of something like this, and yet attach it to so many different kinds of music in the course of one night, deliver it to people, and have it be this kind of magical. I love the reception. It felt very local. You have that real touch here, and obviously a real long connection in the islands. It's great that you would be part of the Blue Notes inaugural season, so to speak. And
we're honored to be, truly, we are honored to be here. And, we wanted to be part of the growth. We wanted to, seed, that kind of multicultural diversity in sound and in spirit. So, and hopefully, get a chance to come back again and again, because it's about growing that sense, and really that we can reabsorb the Hawaiian culture and reinterpret it on so many different levels, because it is a multicultural, right? I mean, if there's any place that's multicultural, it is here. And if there's lessons to be learned, it is also here.
In the gathering place.
Yeah, in the gathering place, right.
It's Dan Kuramoto. It's Hiroshima. They're doing a whole bunch of shows here at Blue Note, Hawaii, and it's a real thrill that he took some time in the midst of it all for HPR, member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, a nonprofit radio station, and a real thrill. I really appreciate your time. God bless you, brother.
Hey, thank you, brother. Well, hey, my honor, because, right away, we're good right from nonprofit, so you know what I'm saying, bro? Because most of our career has been pretty nonprofit. Thanks, man.